Welcome to Liturgical Shenanigans, a Wayfolk Arts podcast, with your hosts, Hannah,
Phil,
Jackson,
and Maddie.
Welcome back to Liturgical Shenanigans, friend. In this episode, I'll get to share with you some work that I got to do this month. We're going through the Psalms of Ascent, and this month was my turn to translate one. And so I took a look at Psalm 129, which isn't the next in order from the one that Jackson did last month, Psalm 120, but it was one that I wanted to translate. So that's what we did. One of the reasons I was drawn to it is because it's got some strangeness to it, some cursishness to it. And that's something that I'm often wrestling with. And when I get to preach, if I get to preach that kind of thing, that's what I'm excited about. So I dove into that psalm. I really had a lot of fun diving into the translation of this. The practice of translation in seminary was like, it's homework, right? But even then, I got a lot out of it. And when we do it now, it's just such a great way to look at something that you think you know, and then get to see how maybe the translations that I've seen before, or even the one I'm working from, made decisions that it made based on the words that are there. And so getting to see kind of the breadth of ways that one could approach the scripture, or even individual words in it, or kind of tie together the interpretive theme, the wordplay that's happening in the Hebrew that we can't have in English. What would our version of that look like? Is always both really fun, really rewarding, and also just such a living reminder of how alive this text in our tradition is as we dive into this kind of content together. And I particularly found that some of the playfulness fun in this one. So in translations that I've seen of this one, English translations, it really feels like two separate psalms. There's this opening half that's about I have suffered, and this second half that's essentially a curse after this acknowledgement of God's goodness, God's justice, God's righteousness. It's that word, which we could translate different ways, but I ended up sitting with justice because of some of the themes that are going on here. There's definitely the theme of imposed suffering in the first half, and the second half being against those who hate Zion, which I ended up translating as work against, because hate is in English such a word of breadth, of feelings, of emotion. And this really does feel like what we're asking is for them to be turned around, to make them retreat. And so it feels like it really is about the actions that they're taking. But so those two separate psalms, I was really curious how they get tied together. And there's this theme of harvest, or at least planting that goes throughout it. In the first half, there's the plowers plowing, which is there in every translation. That's pretty explicit. And then we have these allegories of grass growing and sheaves, of reapers and gatherers. And then this last verse, which I really enjoyed looking into, because what does this mean? It's something like, the people who go by don't say, the Lord bless you, the Lord be with you. And it was really fun to just do even a little bit of dive into that and recognize where else that shows up in Scripture, which is in Judges in Ruth, in the time of the Judges, in the harvesting, when Boaz goes out to the field and says, the Lord bless you, and they respond, the Lord be with you. And there's several commentators talking about how, this appears to be, and it makes sense that it is, a traditional back and forth greeting of harvest time. And so that idea of, it's not saying, may no one bless you in the last verse, but it's saying, it's a continuation of this theme that the harvest might not be as plentiful as you would hope, or maybe that it's not even there, and it uses the comparison of roof grass, which isn't something I'd known about. But given the ways that they bind the materials of the roof together with mud, seeds land, grass grows, but as soon as the sun hits it, it's gone. And so this whole idea of the first half being these are the people that have harmed me, and the second half being may the harm that they're causing not continue, not produce a harvest, really felt like a really exciting and really sort of moving theme to tie the whole thing together. I did have some struggle trying to figure out how to say in English words what it was I was getting excited about in this psalm, because the words translated literally don't always carry that. Like, for instance, the words in the first half where it's saying, they've in my translation, I said they've stepped on me, but it's definitely this word for like, causing harm or have afflicted me or something like that. And then, but they have not somethinged me. And that word, several translations use like prevailed or overcome or conquered. But that prevailed word, if in the flood story, it's like the waters prevailed upon the earth until the mountains were covered. It's this idea of overcoming, of burying. And so trying to find those ways that I could say that without feeling like, how much am I just changing this to say what I want it to say? And how much of it is me trying to find a way to communicate what feels like the imagery that pulls through what the psalm is doing in its original form. And so that's a little tricky. I did a similar two other things I did that were making me feel like, is this allowed? Am I breaking the rules? Because, for instance, when it talks about, like, I said the blade of the reaper, and it's actually the hand, but it was like the hand of the reaper and like the bosom of the binder, the gatherer, and it was I don't know how to differentiate that. That feels like I'm saying the same thing in English twice, but in my head, the mower or the reaper would be the one who cuts, and so I thought that would be less of a trip up and not breaking anything. So, and plus blades sounded scary. And so I wanted to put that in there. So judge me harshly on that. And then also that blessing is in there in the last verse. The blessing of the Lord be upon you. The Lord bless you. The Lord be with you. And I decided actually those words are more distracting than helpful to the theme, because we don't have that particular context for these words bring up. Like, we know trick or treat means Halloween, right? We know certain greetings mean a certain thing. And so for me to say, the blessings of harvest time would be a more accurate, would give you a more accurate picture of what the song is saying than actually using the blessing that's there that we don't have context for. So when it comes to how did I see God at work in this psalm, there are things going on in the world that feel tied to this outcry. I'm thinking about, even on the day that I recorded this, I was having some news play in the background, and there was someone, at the risk of being slightly political, not sorry. You can curse me if you want to. But there was a person who was coming for services provided by funding from USAID, and the office that she was coming to was closed, and there was a reporter outside of it, like, saying, "Hey, what's this like for you? Like, where are you going to go now? Do you have a backup plan?" And this person was just like not in the mood to talk to a reporter, and I was just like, how, like, this one face is like so many right now, and not even just with this particular thing that's happening in our world, but with all sorts of things, of people who are not being able to have homes, who are not being able to have the income that they need, who are not being able to have the health services that they need, who are not being able to even be seen as the person that they, or the culture that they understand themselves to be. And this felt like both such a painful psalm, like acknowledging the deep trenches and the stomping that continues to happen. And this is how many thousand years after the song was written, and we're still doing this thing. And the hope that's there in the, no, it's not okay. It's not over. We continue to get up, and we continue to hold each other up, and we continue to say this isn't okay. And we continue to say, may the day of the Lord come when this all dries up, when its harm is understood and done away with, and we get to live in a world that isn't about stomping and carving deep furrows and living off of the suffering of others. So that's just a little bit of what translating this psalm was like for me. I'd be curious if you take a look at the psalm, what it brings up for you, or if you are someone that has a little bit of Hebrew skills, how you would have made some of those choices or what you might have tried to do to pull it together. And join us later on this month as we have our main flagship show. We're going to be talking a little bit about this translation, and also a blog post that I put together reflecting on some of these things that I've shared with you here today. So hope to see you soon. Thanks, friends.